Hi everyone, I'm Amol and I hope that all of you are doing well and keeping safe. Moving forward into the discussion on rules of construction of statutes, this week we will have a look at the rule of beneficent construction. As was discussed in the first chapter of this series, the beneficent construction is used to construe the statutes in a way that provisions give relief and protection. In simple terms, the rule of beneficent construction is reading the provision in a way that one gives them their widest possible meaning to extend some relief or benefit. Beneficent construction is the rule of construction that seeks to promote public good and prevent misuse of power. Now, the first and the foremost question that may arise out of this introduction is when and in what cases do the courts apply this rule of beneficent construction? You must be aware that there is an entire set of legislations in India which find their origins in the concept of welfare state. The welfare state is a way of governing in which the state or an established group of social institutions provides basic economic security for its citizens. By definition, in a welfare state, the government is responsible for the individual and social welfare of its citizens. Also, the Constitution of India, through Directive Principles of State Policy, also called as the abbreviated form DPSP, despite being unenforceable in a court of law, provides a comprehensive set of principles that the state should keep in mind while formulating any policy or law for the country. Few of the directive principles are 39A. The state shall direct its policy towards securing adequate mean of livelihood to men and women, promotion of justice, equal opportunity, and free legal aid, security of work, education, public assistance in several cases, and so on and so forth. Now, in order for the government to achieve this objective of citizen welfare and to ensure that it follows the DPSP, there are certain statutes, legislations which are promulgated with an intent of welfare of certain set of citizens or people or section of the people. Some of the examples of welfare legislation in India are Industrial Disputes Act, Factories Act, Workmen's Compensation Act, Minimum Wages Act, Payment of Wages Act. All these acts are created with an intent to ensure welfare of a weaker section of the society, which is the workman. Similarly, there are certain other acts and statutes like Legal Services Authorities Act, the intent of which is to make legal services available to all the citizens. The Rent Control Act, which kind of provides a lot of protection to the tenants, so to say. The Consumer Protection Act, the intent of which is to ensure welfare of the consumers in the society. So now let us try and understand this rule of construction of statute with a couple of examples. Now, in the matter of D.N. Sanghvi and Sons versus Ambalal Tribhuvan Das, 1974 1 SCC 708, the Honorable Supreme Court, while interpreting the provisions of Section 12(1)(f) and Section 39 of the MP Accommodation Control Act, and while dealing with a question of how the expression his business, has held that, I quote, considering the complementary nature of Section 12(1)(f), the words into inverted commas for the purpose of continuing or starting his business in the section should be amplified to read as for the purpose of his own occupation. Now, if you read the section carefully, it only uses the term for the purpose of continuing or starting his business. The court while interpreting it, has gone ahead and amplified it to read it as his own occupation. Now, why this amplification of this section? So that they can ensure that the provisions are interpreted in strictest possible form and the benefit can be extended to the tenants, which is the object of the act, which is MP Accommodation Control Act. So we can see as to how, while applying the beneficial construction for the tenant, the court has widened the scope of the phrase and made it stricter, thereby benefiting the tenant. One more such example is in the matter of state of Karnataka versus Vishwa Bharati House Building Cooperative Society, which is 2003 to SCC 412, wherein the Honorable Supreme Court held that the Consumer Protection Act 1986, while it is now amended, but this case pertains to the Consumer Protection Act 1946, it held that Consumer Protection Act is a socio-economic legislation and is required to be interpreted as broadly as possible. It went on to say that even if the jurisdiction lies or may lie with different forums, the Consumer Protection Act should be interpreted so broadly that its jurisdiction and list still remains. So friends, we now understand that the courts will apply the beneficent construction to interpret legislations, provisions to give wider interpretation, to make sure that the welfare object of the act and legislation is protected. Having discussed the above, there are a few caveats for the courts while applying the beneficial construction. It's not always blanket, right? So there are certain caveats while applying the rule of construction, that is beneficent rule of construction. What are those caveats? A, the beneficent construction cannot be in the nature of re-legislating and should not go beyond the object of the act. So court, while interpreting any statute, has to remain within the object of the act, and it cannot be something which can be termed as re-legislation. B, where the words and phrases express only one clear meaning, there's no reason for the courts to widen its scope and interpret. And C, where the provisions are unambiguous and don't create any doubt, there's no question of interpreting it in any other way. So I hope that today's discussion would urge you for some research around the subject of beneficent construction. Feel free to connect with me to discuss around this subject, and I'm sure we'll have a mutually enriching experience. As usual, just search for Lex Prudence, Lex Lex Prudence, Prudence, on your favorite podcast platform, Anchor, Spotify, Google, Breaker, or Radio Public, and listen, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to send in your comments and feedbacks. Have a great day and take good care of yourself. Goodbye.